The sun over planet Tirak was harsh, burning everything it touched. The sand stretched far and wide like a golden sea. There was no tree, no shade, just heat, silence, and wind that whispered secrets. Only the desert understood. Darren lived alone in a small outpost at the edge of the salt flats. He was a human mechanic, tall and quiet. His skin was tanned by the sun, and his hands were rough from years of fixing broken machines. Traders came to him sometimes, bringing hoverbikes, desert drones, and water filters that needed repair. But most days, it was just Darren and the desert. That afternoon, Darren was inside his workshop, working on an old sand stabilizer. The wind outside grew stronger, carrying with it something strange, a buzzing sound. Like machines rushing at high speed. Darren stepped outside and shaded his eyes. In the distance, a group of hover skimmers raced across the desert, dust clouds followed behind them. At first, it looked normal, maybe a patrol or a trader gang. But then Darren saw it. Something was being dragged behind the last skimmer. It was a person or something shaped like one. The figure bounced and rolled over the sand, tied by a long chain to the skimmer. Darren's chest tightened. He grabbed his binoculars and focused. The being was not human. Its skin was pale blue, and its limbs were thin and long. Blood mixed with dust on its body, and one of its arms was clearly broken, yet it moved barely. Its eyes opened for a second. They looked straight at Darren. The hover group passed, leaving the dragged alien behind in the heat. Darren lowered his binoculars and stood still for a long moment. No one else would help. That was clear. He looked down at his hands, then back at the horizon. The wind whispered again. An hour later, Darren found the alien lying half buried in sand. The creature was breathing just barely. Its chest rose and fell, shallow and weak. The chain around its neck had cut deep into the skin. Darren approached. Slowly, "You alive?" he asked. The alien opened one eye and made a soft sound, like a hum mixed with pain. It didn't speak Darren's language, but it nodded. "You're lucky they didn't drag you into a dune pit." Darren muttered. He looked around. No one in sight, just him, the heat, and the broken being at his feet. With effort, he unlocked the chain and lifted the alien onto his hover cart. It was light to light for a living thing. Its bones felt fragile, like glass under cloth. Back at the outpost, Darren placed the alien on a makeshift bed. He gave it water and used his old medkit to clean the wounds. The alien winced, but didn't resist. "You're not the first Nayari I've seen," Darren said while wrapping the broken arm. "But you're the first I've seen survive this far into human territory." The alien looked at him. "Confused Nayari," Darren repeated, pointing gently. "That's your kind, right?" It blinked once and nodded. Darren sat back and wiped his forehead. "Why were they dragging you?" The alien pointed to a pouch tied around its waist. It had been torn during the dragging, but inside was a small crystal key. It glowed faintly, pulsing with light. Darren raised an eyebrow. "That's old tech. Very old. You stole this?" The Nayari shook its head quickly. Then it placed one hand over its chest and pressed the other against the glowing crystal. "You were protecting it." Darren guessed. The alien gave a soft, sad sound, something like a whisper lost in wind. Later that night, Darren sat outside the outpost, the stars over Tirak were bright and cold. He looked at the horizon, where the hover gang had come from. They dragged someone across the desert. He said quietly to himself, 40 miles, like garbage. He thought of Earth. Long ago, humans had done the same to each other. History. Books were full of it: hatred, cruelty, fear of the unknown. But this wasn't Earth. This was Tirak. And Darren didn't want to be part of that kind of history again. Inside, the alien stirred. Darren walked back in and checked the bandages. The Nayari looked at him with tired eyes and held out the crystal key again. "I don't know what it is," Darren said, "but I'll help you." The alien nodded slowly. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. In the morning, Darren prepared his hover bike. He packed supplies, water, tools, and solar wraps for cover. He didn't know what danger lay ahead or why the crystal mattered so much, but he knew this. No one else had stepped into the desert to stop it. Now he had. and something deep in the sand was starting to wake. The sun rose again over Tirak's desert, painting the sky orange and red. Darren stood outside his outpost, tightening straps on his hoverbike. Behind him, the Nayari alien, still weak but stronger than before, watched silently. Darren looked back. "You sure you want to come?" The alien gave a small nod. Its body still shook from pain, but its eyes were clear. It held the glowing crystal key tightly, as if it were the last piece of its world. Darren sighed. "All right, let's go." He helped the alien onto the hoverbike and covered it with a heat cloak. Then they sped off toward the direction the hover. Skimmers had come from the day before toward Bastar, the biggest human settlement in the region. Bastar was not a city. It was a fortress built from metal scrap and old starship parts. Towers made from rusted fuel tanks reached into the sky. Turrets moved slowly, tracking every vehicle that approached. Darren stopped at the gate. A guard stepped out. He wore dust, armor, and dark goggles. "What do you want?" the guard asked. "Need to speak with Commander Haas." Darren said calmly, "It's about the alien they tried to kill." The guard frowned. "You mean that Nayari? It's dead, isn't it?" Darren turned his head slightly. The Nayari sat quietly behind him under the cloak. "Not yet," Darren replied. "Let me in." The guard hesitated, then radioed someone. After a moment, the gates creaked open. Inside, the people of Bastar stared as Darren rode through the dusty streets. Most of them had never seen a Nayari up close. Some looked shocked, others looked angry. He parked near the command building and helped the alien off the bike. Soldiers came forward quickly, weapons ready. "Back off," Darren said. "It's not here to fight." The doors opened and Commander Haas stepped out. He was a heavy man with a thick beard and sharp eyes. "You've lost your mind," Haas growled. "Bringing that thing here? This thing almost died because of your men," Darren said. "Dragged 40 miles across the flats. Why?" Haas crossed his arms. "It stole something. Broke into our south vault and took an energy key, probably to sell it to raiders." Darren shook his head. "It didn't steal it. It was protecting." "It protecting?" Haas laughed. "From what?" The Nayari stepped forward and held out the glowing crystal. A soft hum filled the air. Darren looked at the alien. "Show them." The alien pointed at the ground, then raised one hand and made a slow twisting motion in the air. Then it placed its hand on the key. Suddenly, an image appeared floating in the air like a hologram, a giant machine buried beneath the sand. Its core pulsed with energy. Around it, everything burned: plants, animals, even buildings. The sand turned to black glass. The people around them gasped. "What is that?" Haas asked. The alien made a soft sound, and Darren spoke. "It's a warning. That key doesn't power a weapon. It stops one." Commander Haas's face turned serious. "That's not what our tech team said. We believe it could unlock something under the old mines, something valuable. You dig that thing up," Darren said slowly, "and it will destroy everything around it." The alien nodded. Its eyes were wide with urgency. "But why would it risk coming here?" Haas asked, frowning. "Why would a Nayari care what happens to us?" Darren looked at the alien, then back at Haas. "Because they've seen it happen before. Maybe long ago, maybe on another planet. They know what this machine is capable of. That's why it took the key to stop you from waking it." Silence followed. Haas walked back and forth for a moment. "I don't like being tricked," he said finally. "But if what you're saying is true, then we've been digging our own graves." The alien stepped forward again and placed the key gently in Darren's hands. It looked at him, then at Haas. "What's it doing?" the commander asked. "It's giving it to me," Darren replied. "It trusts me." Haas stared at them. "You're both crazy. You know that. But if this can save Bastar, then I'm not going to stop you." He turned to the soldiers. "Let them go. Give them the speed bikes and a nav chip. They're heading into the deep zone." That evening, Darren and the Nayari stood near the exit gates. The alien had fresh bandages, and its strength had returned a little. The speed bikes waited beside them. "You ever been to the deep zone?" Darren asked. The alien tilted its head, then drew a small symbol in the sand, a spiral surrounded by dots. Darren didn't understand, but he knew it meant something old. They rode out together into the desert again. leaving Bastar behind. The sun dipped low, and the stars began to appear as they crossed the dunes. The Nayari tapped Darren's shoulder and pointed to the horizon. There, far in the distance, was a faint blue glow beneath the ground, like a heart beating deep inside. The sand. Darren narrowed his eyes. That's where it is, huh? He asked. The alien nodded. They didn't speak after that. The wind returned, whispering once more, but this time it carried a different voice, not of warning, but of purpose. The desert stretched wide and quiet as Darren and the Nayari rode their speed bikes across the deep zone. The sand glowed faintly under the moons, and the air was cool now. Each mile they passed felt more distant from human land and closer to something forgotten. They rode without speaking. The Nayari held the crystal key close, its soft light reflecting in its pale blue eyes. Darren noticed how the alien moved more freely now. The bruises had faded a little, but the danger was just beginning. Suddenly, their bikes slowed down. Darren looked at the control panel. Signals weak. Sand interference. The Nayari pointed ahead. A large dune blocked their view. They parked the bikes and climbed up carefully. As they reached the top, both stopped. In the valley below, a campfire burned. Round it were 6 hover raiders, wearing mismatched armor and dark face masks, and in the center of the camp was a broken drone scanner, the same kind Bastard used to search for underground tech. Darren whispered. They're here to find the machine. The Nayari lowered itself onto the sand, watching closely. Its eyes narrowed. One of the raiders stood and pointed toward a glowing patch of ground. The others began marking the spot with flags. They're close, Darren said. Too close. The Nayari looked at Darren, then at the crystal key. No, Darren said. We can't just rush in. There are 6 of them and only 2 of us. The alien didn't move. Its hands trembled slightly. Darren touched his chest. I'll think of something. They waited until night deepened, when the raiders finally went to sleep in shifts. Darren and the Nayari crept down silently. Darren had brought small EMP chargers from Bastard devices meant to disable tech for a few minutes. He placed one near the scanner and another near the raiders' power packs. The Nayari stayed hidden, watching with alert eyes. Darren gave a nod. He clicked the remote. BZZZZT. The camp lights flickered and died. Sparks flew from the power packs. The scanner shut off. One of the raiders shouted, "What's going on?" Another checked the equipment. "We've been hit," and blast. Darren didn't wait. He grabbed the scanner's data core and ran. The Nayari followed close behind, but the raiders saw movement there, by the rocks. Shots fired bright red beams slicing the air. They ran hard, sliding down a small ridge. The desert was dark and twisting, but Darren knew how to use it. "Here," he whispered, pulling the Nayari behind a rock ledge. They held their breath. As the raiders searched, after 10 long minutes, the sounds faded. The raiders were confused, moving in the wrong direction. Darren and the alien sat quietly, waiting for dawn. When morning came, the sun rose like fire. They sat on a high cliff, looking at the data core from the stolen scanner. Darren connected it to his wrist link. A map appeared. It showed a large underground chamber, shaped like a circle, deep under the dunes. "That's it," he said. "The old machine." The Nayari reached out and touched the map gently. "You've seen this before, haven't you?" Darren asked. The alien didn't speak, but nodded slowly. Then it drew in the sand a picture of a great door opening, and then darkness spreading from it. Darren understood. Your people tried to stop it before. The alien pressed a hand to its chest, then tapped the crystal key. A clear message. "This is our duty." They continued their journey, following the map to a strange ridge of black stone. The desert sand ended here, and jagged rocks rose from the ground like old teeth. At the center was a round platform, half buried. The Nayari stepped forward and knelt. It placed the key into a small slot hidden under the dust. The platform shuddered. A faint humming began. The ground beneath them started to open, revealing stairs going downward. Darren looked around. Let's hope no one saw that. They descended together into darkness. Inside, the air was thick and dry. Lights flickered to life along the walls, dim blue circles that glowed with each step. Strange machines lined the halls. all covered in dust and time. Darren walked slowly. This place is ancient. The Nayari nodded and guided him carefully. At the end of the passage, they entered a massive room. In the center stood a giant sphere floating in the air, connected by glowing lines to the walls and floor. It pulsed with a low sound, like a sleeping heartbeat. The Nayari pointed. This was the Echo Core. Darren walked around it. So this is the machine everyone's afraid of. The alien touched one of the glowing lines. Images flashed in the air. Cities destroyed. Deserts turned to black crystal. Skies darkened by storm clouds. Darren felt cold. This thing, it doesn't just kill. It erases. The Nayari moved to a small control panel at the base of the sphere. It placed the crystal key into a socket. A soft tone echoed. The machine began to stir. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Red dot and alarms sounded. The Nayari looked up in shock. Then they both heard attentions from above. They followed us. Darren said, "The raiders, maybe more." The alien's hands moved quickly over the panel. It looked at Darren, then pointed at the door. "No." Darren said firmly, "I'm not leaving." The alien pushed again, shaking its head. The message was clear. "I'll stop the core. You must escape." Darren stepped closer. "No one saves aliens here," he said. "That's what they say." He pulled out a second crystal, one he'd hidden in his bag from Baxter's tech vault. But maybe it's time that changed. The Nayari stared at him in surprise. Then, slowly, it nodded. They turned together to face the machine. The footsteps of enemies echoed down the hall, and the desert above held its breath. The desert was quiet. To quiet. Darren climbed the stairs from the underground chamber, his heart heavy and his body tired. The echo of the core silence still lingered in his mind. The Nayari was gone, vanished into the machine itself, or something else beyond his understanding. He stepped out into the bright sunlight. The sky was clear, but he knew time was running out. From far away, he heard the low roar of engines. It was the Bastar militia, fast hoverbikes and armored vehicles, racing across the dunes like a swarm. Darren knew what they wanted: to capture him and the proof of the core, to claim the machine's power for themselves. He didn't have many weapons, just a few scavenged gadgets, his mining laser, and a handful of imps, but he had the desert. Darren rode his old hoverbike fast, heading toward the jagged canyon called the Teeth. It was a narrow, twisting place full of sharp rocks and deep shadows, perfect for hiding and confusing enemies. Behind him, the militia followed in a long line, shouting orders and firing blasters. "Stop him!" their leader screamed over the comms. "Bring him back alive!" Darren's hands gripped the handlebars tight. He kicked a button, releasing smoke bombs behind him. The militia bikes slowed, struggling for vision. He veered sharply into a tight turn. His bike almost tipped, but he caught it. He knew every rock and dune in this place from years of wandering. The militia tried to follow, but crashed into each other or got stuck in sand pits. Darren's plan was simple: use the desert to slow them down, confuse them, and give himself time to find a better way. He set up small traps along the canyon paths, hidden tripwires attached to old mining charges he had kept. When militia vehicles passed, the charges blew, sending rocks and sand flying. The raiders were angry and desperate. One shouted, "He's playing with us. Kill him." Another fired a blaster at Darren's bike, but the shot missed, hitting a rock instead. Darren smiled grimly. "You're not ready for the desert," he muttered. As the chase continued, Darren reached an ancient ruin, what looked like the remains of a forgotten city buried in sand. He stopped and jumped off his bike. The militia was close behind. He hurried inside a collapsed building and took cover. The militia riders spread out, searching every corner. Darren pulled out an old mining drone he had repaired before. He turned it on, sending it crawling quietly into the shadows. The drone released a soft beep, then a loud screeching noise, startling the militia. The soldiers rushed to find the source. Darren slipped past them and ran deeper into the ruins. The Nayari's sacrifice weighed on him. The alien had given its life to save the desert and everyone on Tirak. Darren's breath was heavy as he moved. "I can't let this end here," he said to himself. "I have to tell them the truth." He found an old communication console, half buried. Under dust, with shaking hands, Darren repaired the power link and sent a broadcast signal. "This is Darren of Tirak." His voice echoed across the outpost networks. "The machine beneath the desert is alive. It's dangerous. The Nayari sacrificed everything to stop it. Listen to me, stop mining and digging. Protect the desert before it's too late." The militia heard the broadcast and stopped, confused. The leader cursed. "He's tricking us. Shut it down." But others listened. Slowly, voices of reason rose from the outpost. Traders, mechanics, and desert folk began to question their orders. Darren knew it was only the beginning. Suddenly, the militia leader's voice came over the radio again. "This desert is ours. No alien or human will stop progress. Bring Darren." And dead or alive, Darren packed up and moved. The desert was no longer just sand and heat. It was a battleground. He wasn't alone anymore. The desert sun beat down fiercely as Darren and the glowing crystal key moved closer to the hidden cave where the echo core lay buried. The air shimmered with heat, but Darren's mind was cold with worry. Beside him, the Nayari alien, though weak, stood, tall and steady. Its skin still shone faintly with the light of the core's power, and its eyes reflected determination. The ancient machine had nearly destroyed the desert once. Now, it was their last hope to stop it for good. Inside the cave, the air was cool and heavy. The walls hummed softly with the energy of the core. Darren placed the first crystal key carefully into the glowing slot on the console. The machine pulsed to life, the blue light spreading through the chamber like veins of electricity. Only one more key. The Nayari whispered. Darren looked at the alien. "You said only you can use the second one, right?" The Nayari nodded slowly. Its face was calm but sad. "You don't have to do this," Darren said, voice breaking. "We can find another way." The alien shook its head. "No other way." Its voice was soft but firm. "If I insert the key, I will not survive, but the core will sleep again." Darren's hands trembled as he held the second crystal. The chamber's hum grew louder, as if the machine was alive and waiting. The Nayari stepped forward and placed its hand gently over the key slot. Darren grabbed the alien's hand for a moment. "Thank you." The alien smiled faintly, then touched. The key to the slot. Light exploded around them, bright and warm. The core's power pulsed through the alien, wrapping it in a cocoon of blue fire. Darren shielded his eyes. When the light faded, the alien was gone. Only the console remained, silent and dark. Darren sank to his knees, heart heavy with loss. "I won't forget," he whispered. "You saved this desert. You saved us." Outside, the desert was peaceful again. The sand no longer burned. The wind sang soft songs of life. Darren stood and looked at the horizon. He knew the fight wasn't over, but for now, there was hope. The desert sun was low, casting long shadows across the sands as Darren returned to Bastar. His steps were heavy, his heart heavier. The sacrifice of the Nayari alien weighed on him with every mile. He carried proof now, data from the core, the crystal keys, and a story no one wanted to hear. At the gate, soldiers eyed him suspiciously. Whispers spread through the dusty streets. "The man who saved the desert," some said. Others whispered, "The alien's friend." Darren made his way to the central square, where the leaders gathered. Commander Haas stood waiting, arms crossed, his face stern. "Darren," Haas said, voice low but serious, "what do you have to say?" Darren looked him in the eyes. "The echo core is real. It was about to destroy the desert and everyone in Bastar. But the Nayari stopped it. She gave her life to save us." He laid out the evidence, the data core, the crystal keys, and the images from the core's warning. The crowd listened, some doubtful, others fearful. Days passed, and the story spread across the settlement. Some dismissed it as myth, others began to question the mining and digging that had gone on for years. A small group of humans and Nayari, those who had survived and hidden, began meeting quietly. They spoke of peace, of respect, and of learning from one another. Commander Haas, though still wary, agreed to form a council, one where humans and Nayari could share power and protect the desert together. Darren stood at the edge of the outpost, looking out over the sand. He planted flowers near the cave entrance where the core slept once more. Fresh water bubbled nearby, a gift from both the desert and those who chose to listen. The wind whispered through the dunes. This time, it was not a warning, but a promise. One evening, as stars filled the sky, a young Nayari approached Darren. She smiled softly and said, "Thank you, you saved us." Darren smiled back. No one is alone in the desert now. The desert was alive, full of hope and new beginnings. And Darren knew the story was just starting.